Welcome, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Fatma, and welcome to yet another podcast on Speaking for IELTS with me. So, in case you didn't know me yet, my name is Fatma. I've been teaching IELTS for almost 5 years now, and I've been helping prospective students and IELTS test takers towards achieving their desired band score. So, the purpose of this whole podcast was to help students out by giving them sample responses of what could be an ideal answer, in my opinion, for certain questions in the IELTS exam. So, for the past few episodes, I've been picking out certain topics, but this week I had received requests from some of my students to do this. So, this is a huge shout out to them. If you're listening, just drop a hi in the comments and I'll be happy to see them. Anyway, so for this week, we'll be taking a look of yet another diverse handful of topics for both part 1, part 2, as well as part 3. So let's get started without further ado. Now, for part 1, I will be tackling the questions about food. They're pretty simple, but sometimes, even when we are talking about things that we're passionate about, we run out of words. So let's begin. For part 1, we have 4 questions here about food. Now, whenever you're going to be talking about food in part 1, you've got to remember that you try to keep vocabulary flowing. You should add in at least some words which are related to food or words that would help you to describe food. Words like delicious, tasty, mouth-watering, what else? Delightful, indulgent, words like that. So we'll take a look at what are some other words that we could use. Also, I'll be going in with a handful of idiomatic expressions as well. So I'll be using them and then I'll explain to you what could necessarily be the meaning of this particular idiomatic expression. Okay, let's begin. So for part 1, we are going to talk about food. And the first question is, what food do you like to eat? My response would be, to be very honest with you, I am not a picky eater as long as it's not rabbit food or raw food. I am down to taste anything that could be potentially my next favorite food. I am very open to exploring new tastes and new cuisines. So, as of now, I would say what I love to eat the most or what I would binge on without any guilt would be a bag of popcorn. Well, it depends. It changes from time to time, but as of now, I have an affinity towards crunchy foods. Okay, so here I used not a picky eater. So picky eater is used to describe somebody who's very particular about their food and do not like going beyond their comfort zone to try something. And another idiomatic expression that you might have come across would be rabbit food. So when we say rabbit food, we don't really mean rabbit food, okay? But think about the diet of a rabbit. Rabbits often eat. What do they eat? They eat carrots, plenty of green, leafy vegetables. So that is what it is. Okay. When we say rabbit food in colloquial English or conversational English, it just means salads, green salads. Okay. All right. The next question asks, what are some kinds of food you never eat and why? As a practicing Muslim, I cannot, will not, and do not have the need to try up pork or its derivatives, nor am I allowed to try wine. So, as much as I would say that these are the two things that I would completely restrict myself to trying, pork, and wine, I would also like to add eggplant or aubergines or brinjal to the list because I'm allergic to them. So, for this question, what kind of foods you never eat, you can be honest, okay? You can talk about foods that have been prohibited by your faith to try out, or you can talk about foods which you are allergic to. You know, there are people who are allergic to peanuts. There are people who are allergic to slimy foods like I said, aubergine and okra. Uh, these are, they since they have a lot of, I don't know, they have a lot of slime in them, and it's itchy for certain people. So therefore, you can talk about food allergies as well. Okay, next question. So, do you enjoy cooking? I love cooking. It's actually my favorite pastime. I tend to look up recipes online and I enjoy replicating them during my free time or when I would like to unwind. Although baking is not my cup of tea, I still make um a passable tray of brownies. So here, do you enjoy cooking? You can go either ways. You can either say yes or you can say no, depending upon your uh, ability. If cooking is not your thing, then you can say, unfortunately, cooking is not my cup of tea, but I do enjoy looking at people cook, doing their thing, working their magic on a kitchen countertop. The next question asks, what's your favorite meal of the day? It's definitely got to be breakfast. They usually say eat breakfast like a king, so my go-to would always be an English breakfast with pancakes, sausages, and a sunny side up egg, together with a cup of hot tea. So, when you talk about the favorite meal of your day, don't just, give the name of the meal. Don't just say, oh, it's breakfast. Oh, it's got to be dinner. Maybe supplement your answer with either why it's your favorite meal of the day or give the your go-to or your favorite dish that you would eat during that particular time of the day. If you're not really able to think about a particular meal, then probably talk about why it's your favorite meal. You can say it's the time people gather, or it's the time I get to sit with my family and we get to talk about how our day went. So this could be about dinner or about lunch, where you gather with your colleagues and you're able to share your bento boxes or your lunch boxes to try out different cuisines. Okay, so that was about part one. We'll further now go on to part two. And as you know, for part two, it's the cue card, it's the make or break of your speaking assessment. And it's going to be 2 minutes of unrestricted, uninterrupted speaking that you're required to do. And you will have to carry forward the whole monologue and try your best not to stop until the examiner stops you from speaking. For part two today, we're going to describe a beautiful city you have visited, and we're required to say where the city is, when you went there, why you went there, and explain why it is beautiful. Now, if you're not a globetrotter, if you're not somebody who loves sailing the seven seas, it is physically impossible for you to describe this. But there's a way out. You can describe about your hometown. Or if you think, your hometown is just muted grays and skyscrapers and there's nothing that you could define as beauty, then perhaps you can talk about the place where you're living currently or a place that you just visited in the country that you're living in right now. there's no restrictions. There's absolutely zero limitations to what you can say or cannot say for part two. Okay. Since here the question says you have visited, which means that you have to talk about it in the past tense. Okay. It's supposed to be an action that has been completed. But let's say you have maybe a city in your bucket list that you would like to visit in the future, then you can talk about that particular city, bearing in mind that you will mindfully change the tenses to past tense to make it sound like you have already visited it. Okay? All right, so let me go ahead and describe a city that I wish to visit in the future. However, I'll be portraying it and displaying and presenting it as though I have already visited it. There are a lot of beautiful, scenic, and picturesque cities around the world that anybody would like to visit. But for me, in my bucket list, I have the city of Busan, which is one of the cities and one of the places known for tourist attractions in South Korea. As I am an avid K-pop fan, I visited this during early to October 2022, fresh after the COVID restrictions were lifted for the country. The reason why I visited in October 2022 with my friend, her name's Fatima too. We visited this city because there was an event that we wanted to attend. And by God's grace, we were able to secure a lucky draw and we won it. So it was truly a dream come true. And it's in the heart of South Korea. It is an eclectic mix of both hustle and bustle of a metropolitan, yet at the same time subdued by the earthly tones of autumn. When we went there was the National Week for celebrations, and it was also just the end of Chuseok, which is like the Korean New Year or Korean Harvest Festival for that particular calendar year. I think it was so beautiful. I think it took my breath away because I love autumn. I love when green leaves transform and take the color of earth and they're able to cascade in the breeze with weather that is perfectly chilly during night, yet warm during the daytime. And apart from that, there was also one place of the city that I wanted to visit. It's been on my bucket list, apart from the city, actually, for ages, for as long as I can remember. And it was called Cafe Magnate. It is an imminent hotspot for K-pop fans, and we were able to take some pictures there because we live in the era of social media, the age of social media, so it really had to go into my picture aesthetic. So if I ever get a chance in the future, definitely I would love to visit Busan again, and then maybe hop around Ilsan with another friend or the same group of friends of mine. Okay, so there you go. So that was about part two, beautiful city that you have visited. So you can talk about the city, talk about why it's considered beautiful. Why do you think it has, or what is the reason that you consider it beautiful, and the statement of your purpose as to why you visited or why you want to visit this beautiful city. Now we'll further go on to part three. And in part three, we're going to talk about fashion. To be very honest, fashion is not my cup of tea, but I am willing to challenge myself to come up with some good ideas and good responses for fashion. Okay, so the first question here asks, how important are fashion and clothes to you? In my opinion, it is not necessarily an integral part of a person's outward look. I believe in functionalism over trends when it comes to clothing. I think investing in fast fashion brands like Zara or H&M would truly be a waste of money, and also it would lead to landfills. So I think clothes, to an extent that it serves its purpose, is important, but nothing beyond that. What kind of clothes do you dislike and why? I'm not a fan of see through clothes or clothes that are unnecessarily revealing in places that needs to be hidden. We live in a society where um, bearing everything has become the norm and it's being normalized, and I'm not really fond of it. So clothes that support that kind of ideology don't really take the cake for me. How are different the clothes you wear now from those you wore 10 years ago? Um, a decade ago, I was a teen who was religiously following trends that were based on the Turkish dramas that I binge watched with my best friend. I would always go for the nude heels. I would go for some of the, if I remember correctly, ripped jeans and crop tops, followed by a leather jacket. But as I think of them now, it's just a fond memory compared to my wardrobe now, which is more befitting for the profession that I am in. I go for a more sleek, very minimalist, and monochromatic wardrobe so that it's easy to handle, easy to style, and it flatters all my good features. Okay, last question. What do you think the clothes we wear say about us? Um, Similar to how eyes are the windows to the soul, I would say clothes are the unhinged expression of one's personality. The type of clothes, the type of colors that you choose, of course, apart from, uniforms or restrictive clothing that certain professions require you to have, I would say that it is one's canvas wherein they express their personality, how vivacious they are or how bodacious they are. Their clothes can equally be that way. But if they are more into the brooding, they are more subdued, or they are more into the introverted sides, you could see it with muted colors, minimal patterns, and exquisite fabric being used. Okay, so I believe that should be the end of part 3 fashion. This is definitely not right up my alley, but I try my best here. There's always room for improvement, I would say. And fashion in itself, being a woman, I know, should be easy peasy, but it isn't. Whenever you talk about fashion, make sure you talk about clothes. Make sure to mention brands. Make sure to mention patterns, colors, words that you would use to express colors, and so on, because that would be really helpful when it comes to talking about clothes. And try your best to paraphrase whatever questions are given. Be very helpful, especially when you are aiming for that band 7 and upwards. Okay, so I think we have come to an end to this particular podcast, at the episode. And I would say thank you very much for listening to this long recording, rather. I hope your review is going well. I hope you're able to take out something that's beneficial from this. And if you have any suggestions, if you have a topic that you want me to um, attempt, and let me know in the comments, or you can always drop a message to me and I'll be happy to help you with that. So I think we can end that up. Thank you very much for joining in today. I'll see you again in another video, in another podcast episode of Speaking for IELTS with Fatma.